Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back TV personality and host CNBC Fast Money, Guy Adami.
So I'm going to insult some people here. I mean, I walk in this room, it looks like a crowd for a freaking Met game. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's a lot of fans dressed as empty seats. But I get a lot of people watching this on, outside on video screens, and a lot of people watching on replay. But I'm fired up here because I got to meet both of these guys, and I want to introduce them real quick. First person I met yesterday, we did the accelerator panel from Space Capital, Chad Anderson. Chad, come on out. A couple months ago, I had the good fortune to meet with a group of people, publicly traded company out of Phoenix, Arizona. I think you're going to find what they're working on extraordinarily interesting. The CEO of Alpine 4 Holdings, Kent Wilson. Kent? So I mentioned, I met Kent, I don't know, a month and a half, 2 months ago. And when we first started doing the show Fast Money, one of the first companies that I talked about was a company called Danaher. A lot of you folks might know its symbol's DHR. It was started by two brothers, the Rails brothers, and they were on the tributary of, I think, the Colorado River, which is the Danaher River. And they came up with this really cool idea. And it was a company that was sort of growing by acquisition strategically, organically. I don't think a lot of people understood the company in its infancy, but obviously if you look at what they've done over the last 20 years, they understand it now. And my thought was, and we talked about it, what you have going on at Alpine 4, to me, is extraordinarily reminiscent of what they built almost 3 decades ago. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Danaher, I've followed them for years. They struggled at first quite a lot. They have grown into a remarkable company with many different facets of it, and Alpine 4 is no different than that. We were founded in 2014 as a SPAC with a mission to fundamentally change about how people think about holding companies. And we do that through our business model called DSF, Driver Stabilizer Facilitator. But we're here not to talk about our business model today, but I will say some of the driver companies that we acquire is what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and I think what I've learned about you is the synergies between those companies. They don't each live in their own vertical. You're able to integrate them, but then the synergies created, I think, provide great opportunity. We'll talk about that. Chad, yesterday, I didn't moderate, but I sort of stood around for the accelerator panel. And what I found really interesting about your presentation is, I'm in an advisory board of a company called Morpheus Space. And, I'm way over my head in terms of the intelligence level, but I have a modicum of understanding of what goes on and the opportunities that have now presented themselves in space. I think a lot of people don't understand that so many of our day-to-day tasks have their origins in exactly what you're working on. Can you speak to that?
That's exactly right. And when you think about space, you probably think about the Apollo moon landings and the International Space Station and all these grand human achievement, which is great. But really, data is about digital transformation. Space is the invisible backbone that powers our global economy. It underpins all of our global industries: agriculture, insurance, maritime, shipping. Fintech is underpinned by satellite communications. And so this is a massive category. GPS is the most successful space technology in existence. We're all familiar with that. It's generated trillions of dollars in economic value and some of the largest venture outcomes that we've ever seen. And we use that as a playbook for how new space technologies are being created. And so, with all these new small satellites being launched by SpaceX and others, we're getting an unprecedented amount of data about what's happening on the surface of our planet, changes, the movement of goods, monitoring of assets. And with SpaceX and Amazon and others getting into the satellite communications game with their low Earth orbit satellite communications, we are moving from a world where SATCOM is, a niche communications product making up less than 1% of global terrestrial broadband consumption. When these satellite constellations come online, it could account for 30% of all total global internet traffic. And so there is a massive change underfoot. This is a new category for investors. We've been operating in space for decades, but really SpaceX made it accessible for entrepreneurs and venture capital 10 years ago. We're on an exponential curve here, and the next few years are looking like it's not going to slow down at all.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Kent, what's interesting is one of the businesses, you have many businesses that you're excited about, but one of them is your aerospace business. And so I think it sort of dovetails nicely into this last answer that Chad just gave, but can you speak to that? Because I know you're sort of jazzed about it.
Yeah, our aerospace holdings are quite phenomenal. In 2020, we acquired from Bessemer Venture Capital a company called Impossible Aerospace. The founder of that company came from Tesla, and he essentially made a flying drone purely out of battery. So the airframe is battery. And what it enabled it to do is it allowed the drone to fly 2 hours. Now, flash forward, we acquired another drone company, a VTOL company that can fly 600 miles autonomously, come back. For the fund managers in this audience and investors, if you're invested in some of the other drone technologies, such as DJI and maybe some other companies, you may be missing the mark. The platform that we are building is built around the future economy of autonomous delivery of freight. And we think of us at Value Aerospace as the Boeing that is supplying those airframes. The companies that are solving that problem today are the ones that are going to be in the $100 billion market, not the $100 million market. So the things that we're doing are gravitating towards building those airframes and building the solutions on a hardware-software stack to accomplish that goal.
And it's been pretty successful from what I can tell. I mean, just looking at the website and some of the readings I've done, you're well on your way. I don't think the market fully understands, just that vertical alone. We'll talk about that. Chad, one of the things we talked about in space is, climate's on top of mind. And whether, not to be political, but that's out there. And I think, again, what you're doing plays into that. Can you sort of speak to that dynamic?
100%. I mean, we wouldn't know about climate change if it wasn't for space. All of the data, half of essential climate variables that we're tracking come from space-based assets. 99% of weather data comes from space-based assets and satellites. So, it is allowing us to understand the issue and address these types of large-scale global problems. Global problems require global solutions, and fundamentally, that's what satellite systems are. So, there's a hot topic at this conference, certainly, a lot of people talking about it, a lot of people building a slide into their pitch deck and things. ESG for us is in our DNA. So, our partners are leading the world's most ambitious climate projects. My partner is leading MethaneSat. It's a $100 million subsidiary of the Environmental Defense Fund to detect methane emissions globally and make that data broadly accessible. We are putting together industry-leading research and insights. So we've recently put out a report called The Great Climate Opportunity, talking about the $1 trillion investment opportunity for investors that, again, is underpinned by data coming from satellites. So this is, a problem that requires satellites to solve, and there's a massive opportunity for investors if you know where to look.
I agree with that. And Kent, before we came on stage, I was just scrolling, and 9:30 this morning, I saw a news release came out about another Alpine 4 acquisition. I think this is something that, again, dovetails nicely into some of the conversations we're having. But I mentioned Danaher, growth by acquisition. Well, that's exactly the strategy that you're implementing. Can you speak to the announcement that was just made literally 15 or so minutes ago?
Yeah, and we're excited about that. And I'd love to ask you a question on the electrification of space, because that kind of dovetails into our conversation. But today we announced the creation of RCA Batteries. That is a joint venture between our subsidiary ElectJet. ElectJet has managed to produce the world's first production-based graphene lithium battery. And if you're not familiar with graphene, it is a wonder material. It's the most conductive material known to man. And it also is about 200 times stronger than steel. So what does that do for lithium? Well, lithium doesn't like to be charged, at least not quickly. Remember the battery fires with Samsung? That was an issue. Our product and two patents have been filed around the production of graphene in what's called a layer effect. But applied to lithium, it allows it to accept electricity quickly, so it can charge quick. In fact, our graphene batteries are charging anywhere from 2 to 3 times faster up to 30 times faster, which is, if you think about it, I have an electric car. That car can charge from 0 to 45 or 70% in about 45 minutes. With our technology, we'll be able to charge that car in about 7 to 8 minutes.
So when I hear, I don't mean to interrupt, but when I hear you say this, I immediately think, we do this show, hopefully some of you have watched it, called Fast Money every night, and a lot of the companies we talk about, the Neos, the Rivians, the Teslas, I immediately think, here's a really interesting application for those companies. I have no doubt that's on your radar screen. Can you speak to the synergies possibly between those companies?
Yes, since our announcement of the acquisition of ElectJet, and let me just answer that question first, but say this, with our press release this morning, we combined it with our other subsidiary, RCA, to creation of RCA Batteries. RCA Batteries is going after exactly what you talked about. We've had several inquiries from EV manufacturers regarding our technology. I would say that there is genuine interest, right? It's a relatively new technology that will have to be matured a little bit, but is definitely a segment we're going after. In fact, one of our primary focus with RCA Batteries is to go after energy storage systems, which apply perfectly with space, and the ability to maintain that charge and provide electricity to spacecraft continuously without disruption is where some of our sweet spot in our technology is.
It's really fascinating. I mean, there are some synergies here, without question. I hear this graphene, and one of the buzzwords, it's interesting. You do the show for a long time, and over a period of time, you start to learn about new things. ESG was the rage, 3 or 4 years ago, but lithium is now one of the buzzwords clearly for the industry. And if you just look at some of these lithium-based stocks, a Lithium America Corp, for example, off to the races, deservedly so, because we talk about disruptive technology. That's exactly it. So I want to sort of drill down a little bit, but I want to ask you about your firm, Chad, because really fascinating how you've built it. I mean, these are really smart, interesting, thoughtful people from a lot of different areas, and you've assembled them under one roof at Space Capital.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I mean, this is a new category for investment. We've been operating in space for decades, but it was really, a handful of defense contractors on one side and the government on the other, and that was it, a very limited market. SpaceX came along and launched their first customer in 2009. It fundamentally changed the economics of space and opened it up, removed barriers to entry and opened it up for new entrants and venture capital to come in and drive some innovation. And so we've seen exponential growth since then. But it's a new category, and it took a few years for that to catch on and for the first small satellite companies to start to take advantage of that access. And so we saw the first, companies get funded in 2013, launched in 2014, and in 2015, things really started to take off. So if you think about it, we're about 5 to 7 years into this curve. And, we launched our first fund in 2015. That company went public at the end of last year. And so, we're in an interesting space. I'm a finance and economics undergrad and an MBA, business guy. I just saw this opportunity. I was studying nascent markets, and there's a lot similar to what's happening now that's happened in countless other industries beforehand. And so I just kind of read the tea leaves and saw what was coming and built my firm in anticipation of that. Partnered up with my partner out in LA. He is an engineer by training, advanced satellite expert, and also rocketry. He's built and sold multiple space businesses, one of the most successful space operators that I know, other than Elon himself. And when I found him, he just sold his company, Skybox Imaging, a small satellite company, to Google for $500 million, and was advising a lot of these blue chip VC firms in the Valley that were getting excited about the opportunity, looking to invest in the category, but didn't really understand it very well. So that's the partnership, and we've got a great group. Between the two of us, we can diligence probably 85% of everything that we see. Probably one phone call away from anyone that we'd want to get in contact with. So we have really strong networks. But we've really put together a world-class group of operating partners, that help us. Some of the smartest people that have developed the Google Maps API that used to lead level 5 autonomy at Lyft that supports our mobility and positioning thesis. Satellite communications experts and folks on the talent side. Talent's a key area of focus for us, where we support the ecosystem and help support our portfolio companies by helping attract and connect them with top talent.
You mentioned graphene, Kent, and I was not familiar with it, but we talked again backstage, and I asked how it's produced, and you mentioned a couple patent pendings in terms of what you're able to do at Alpine 4. Speak to the importance of that specifically for the industries that you're going to be involved in, because this is a disruptive panel. This is an extraordinary disruptive technology, I would imagine.
It is, and it is one of the forefronts, and it fundamentally expresses what we call a driver company, a disruptive company that is going to lead its industry. I am proud to say, and we talked a little bit about this, but we have developed what I believe to be the world's first solid-state graphene-enhanced battery. And if you're not familiar with solid-state, I'll get back to my electric car. My children know if they're in a car accident, you need to get out of it. If you're in space, the worst thing you want to do is have a fire, right? Our solid-state batteries can be punctured, a hole drilled through them, and still operate. Not explode or catch fire. None of that, but still operate. It is fundamentally going to change the way the EV market operates. And if I can elaborate a little bit, we have a video to show them.
You brought a video with you? I mean, you came prepared. Well, AV team, as they used to say, slide it, Earl.
What if a battery could return precious time? Or the ability to move more seamlessly through your life? At RCA Batteries, we offer the solutions and freedom necessary to charge and propel your future safely. Introducing the new RCA Graphene-Enhanced Solid-State Battery, the next evolution in battery technology, reducing charging time from hours to minutes, with self-cool technology for safer, more stable use, and a battery life that's 3 times longer. A new vision to power our homes, vehicles, and devices is here. RCA Batteries, powering your future.
So that gives you a little flavor for what we're doing. But the bottom line is solid state is the holy grail. Now, I will add this. The future of solid state goes well beyond what we've accomplished, right? In theory, we should be able to charge, in seconds, very large batteries and capacity. The technology is not quite there yet. But what we have developed is a quantum leap above anything else on the market. I would even be remiss if I didn't say further along than solid power is, which is backed by Volkswagen and several other leading companies out there. So we're excited about it. We are bringing small volume production into Q2 of this year, and we will start fielding that out to potential customers to review and test the battery, hopefully to attract NASA and space type of clientele and the EV market.
So this is happening pretty quickly. I mean, that video obviously speaks to how fast, and I want to speak to that. But I think this is important. I'm going to be, people make fun of me on the show. I'll be 70 next year, so I've been doing this a long time. But RCA is you think about all the premium names in the United States. I mean, just names that sort of transcend. RCA is one of those names. That's part of your world right now.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that integration and how important that is? And this is a great American story.
Alpine 4 is the essence of Americana. If you love this country like I do, and you believe in, we were talking today about the resilience of the American economy. There's nothing like that in the world. We weather storms like crazy. Well, Alpine 4 is a microcosm of that. And when the opportunity to buy the legacy business of RCA called RCA Commercial came around, my heart leapt for joy. Now, that company's model now is what I call it's a niche within a commodity. They sell TVs and other components to the healthcare industry and hospitality. Normal, if you were to sell through Best Buy, you might make 10% gross profit. This company produces 30 to 35% because of that niche. But you add the beauty of what ElecJet does, combine it with the name of RCA, and now I believe we have not only a disruptive technology, but marry it to a historically innovative company. And those are the two, that's the beauty of the two. But if I could ask Chad.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Chad, by the way, bet your team, awesome team. Those guys, you guys have just done something that is, out of all the groups in the arena yesterday, we call it, but yours was the most intriguing to me, the forethought of what you guys are doing. But where do you see, some of the complications in space? We talked a little bit about it, but power systems and those type of things going forward into the future?
I mean, there's definitely application for what you're doing in space. Having solid-state batteries is of interest to a lot of governments, a lot of agencies, a lot of companies, because, I mean, you want it. A lot of these systems, especially the larger, more expensive, complicated systems, I mean, they need to work when they get there, right? So having solid-state batteries that are less prone for disaster, blowing up, that sort of thing. But then on the flip side, there's also the debris issue, right? I mean, if you have batteries that explode in space, that's a really big problem, not just for you, but for everyone else around you. So, I mean, certainly, there's a lot of interest here. There's a lot of poking around the edges. The Japanese Space Agency just put a solid-state battery on the space station at the end of last year. So there's interest,
Yeah.
here for what you're doing, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we're familiar with some of the other competitors out there. The issue that's risen with solid state is you charge it too much, it forms dendrite and crystals. So it becomes a throwaway battery. Our graphene and another layer of technology that we've acquired allows that battery not to form those dendrites. So it really changes the landscape for it. And then the other thing we were talking about, the environmental aspects of space, right? And so when you look at lithium and what it does and have the ability to charge things, even if it's through solar or hydro or some of the other things, it becomes a very clean technology. The mining of lithium is the oil boom of this next century. However, it is also one of our environmental aspects that could be horrible. Graphene extends the life of lithium, in some cases, tenfold. Imagine having a battery pack for a power wall for your house that you might have to change out after 7 years, but now it can last 50 years.
So Alpine Ford, at a certain level, becomes an ESG play without question, given what you just said. Now, quickly, and I want you to answer that, but then I'll push back and say, I am certain that there are engineers in China right now working on exactly what you're describing. And they'll say, wait, we can do this just as well as you. But I don't think that's necessarily true.
Listen, China is a competitor at every step of the means. They will and have developed solid-state batteries. But I look at it as, it could be a collaborative approach on certain things with China. I can tell you that there is, in the last 4 or 5 years, a definite push to have things made in the United States. And the United States controls the the Western Hemisphere as far as influence and its economic prowess. And so what I believe with our batteries, even if there's competition from China, the name of RCA and what we're doing, we have a 3 to 5 year competitive advantage before we start to really see that creep into our business model.
And 3 to 5 years in today's world are light year. I mean, that is a huge advantage without question.
Yep.
So Chad, you're down here. Hopefully your meetings are going really well. Talk to me, I think everything you spoke about talks to the value proposition, but speak to exactly that. You're down here looking, how big do you want to get? Who are you looking for on the investing front? Just sort of tell me what you're looking to get out of this conference with Space Capital.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great conference. We've had a packed 2 days, just full of meetings. A lot of interest in the category, and for good reason. I mean, it's a new category, but over the last 10 years, there's been $250 billion of equity capital into private space companies. We're tracking 1,700 space companies that have raised that capital. So this is a fast-growing category, and there's a lot of interest in it, which is great. So, look, we're raising a $50 million fund now. Most of that's committed. We're looking to close that at the end of February. We made the first 7 investments out of that fund and into some really interesting companies. So we are, the team is a key differentiator for us. Also our focus, we're specialist investors, and it takes specialist expertise to invest in this category. There's not another, when we started this firm, a number of years ago, reading the tea leaves, there wasn't anyone else who wanted to operate in this space. Today, space funds are popping up left and right, but the difference is the team, we've got the business and the investing experience, and investing in this category longer than anybody else. We've got the engineering and the operations expertise, and we've got structural alpha built into our product. So again, similarly, we've got a big head start on the competition. It's going to be hard to catch up with us. But look, we're seed stage investors by design. We want to be a small fund that allows us to stay focused on what we're doing. So we're going to continue to be a sub $100 million fund. That doesn't sound like a lot of money to public market investors, but for us, that gives us the capital that we need to continue to lead rounds and take board seats. We're investing at the earliest stage when it's a couple of founders, a business plan, and early product, looking for product market fit. And we've built our firm to be really good at sourcing, diligencing, and supporting those companies at seed. And this, a fund size of 50 to 100 million allows us to continue to build a concentrated portfolio and support those companies and help shepherd them to their Series A and their growth stages.
Allows you to be nimble, something that I was 30 years ago, but I'm not so nimble now. And what's interesting, Kent, the marketplace, SPACs were the rage, obviously, a year, 18 or so months ago. I think that pendulum has swung the other way. And I'm not looking to play stock market here, but I think a lot of these companies are just getting thrown into the same category. And why do you think the market doesn't understand the story that we just spent the last 30 or so minutes about in terms of Alpine 4?
Every company and CEO has to look at their messaging, right? So, we look at it as our messaging was very effective. We grew out of the OTC, and our stock price grew pretty quickly. But now that we're on the NASDAQ, it's a little bit different play, right? And so we're here at events like this, talking with fund managers and looking for the institutional buyers that want to learn more about it. Speaking with guys like yourself, Guy, And so we're looking at fine-tuning our messaging in 2022. I agree with you, SPACs. Granted, our SPAC was formed in 2014, so kind of a granddaddy by any stretch of the means now. But threw a lot of confusion into the market. 2021, our listing on the NASDAQ was incredibly delayed because of the enormous amount of SPACs funneling through the NASDAQ. So messaging will be changing more, I guess, aligned with where we're at. And as people start to understand the power of our business model, and again, for any of the fund managers or analysts that want to know more about DSF, driver stabilizer, facilitator, I'm happy to speak with you guys after this event here today.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool story. And again, messaging is so important. In so many walks of life, the people that have the best message, especially now, are the ones that get rewarded. So it's great to have the story, but you have to have the messaging as well. And I think that's something you're working on as well, just in terms of getting the word out there, in terms of what you've been building and what you'll continue to build.
That's right. That's where we started the conversation. It's that, people have an idea in their head of what space is, right? These grand human achievements, and it's important. And, we've got a lot of things that are coming online with SpaceX with their next Starship vehicle that's going to carry 1,100 metric, cubic meters to orbit, 100 tons for the cost of fuel. You're talking about a vehicle that's going to fundamentally change how we operate in space. There's a lot of really interesting things coming. But today, there's a really interesting digital transformation story happening today. This is digital infrastructure. We have shown an insatiable appetite for bandwidth, and you're only going to get it even in rural areas just outside of cities. It's crazy to think how hard it is to get a connection, where the Wi-Fi and the mobile towers and the signals end. And so we're going to fill all that in with satellite communications, and that's going to have broad implications, not just for your cell phone and your email, but it's going to connect aquaculture farms It's going to enable industrial IoT applications. If you're mining blockchain, you've probably moved your operation to a place, that's very rural and where the energy costs are low. This is going to allow you to have broadband connectivity to your mines. Endless applications. And so, this is something that touches all of us, in more ways than you know, and it's going to continue to in an ever-increasing way. So, that's the message to take away, and one that we keep trying to drive home.
No, I think it's a great one. And Ken, the last sort of minute and a half, I started talking about Danaher, and that's a hard hurdle to make. It's a hard bar to get to, but it's not that far-fetched given your vision. What is your vision for Alpine 4?
I'm glad you asked that. Our vision, like I said, when we founded it, we wanted to fundamentally turn on its head how people looked and investors looked at an operating company. And what I learned over my years of doing turnarounds, there was a successful DNA woven through these companies that were bought out. Now, a lot of times the PE firms would mess them up, and I would go back and fix it. But what I learned is there's a product or service that meets three fundamental characters. A generational company always had a driver product or service, a stabilizer product or service, which means stable, kept the lights on, and the secret sauce was a facilitator, something that gave the other two a competitive advantage. We built that into a business model. So the vision for Alpine 4 is we're out buying these growth stage companies, but they need support, and they need to be when they're competing out there in their market space, they need to have elements of a competitive advantage that other companies can't compete with. And so that's a facilitator model. Like a great example, Vayu Aerospace used a lot of external parts, some of them made in China, before we bought it. We've now repatriated all that. We've created an avionics platform. We did that with our subsidiary, Quality Circuit Assembly, who is a designer and low-level manufacturer for Fortune 100 companies, high tech. We have the engineering knowledge to make that company successful. Outside of the big companies like Lockheed and Boeing, they're really small companies that we compete with they don't have that. And that's what the facilitator side is. So we're driving innovation across all of our holdings, and we do it collaboratively. It's our greatest strength, yet we allow them to be independent so they can be leaders in their industry.
Sounds like you're onto something great. It's all about execution, which I know you and your team are going to do. Chad, I want to thank you. Ken, I want to thank you. Thanks for the folks joining us, and enjoy the rest of the conference, folks. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.